this is why I don't like to wait too long on these, because I saw Borderlands when it came out. Hadn't published a full review yet because they didn't pre-screen this one for critics because they knew they had a bad movie. This by the way, this movie is this is 2 years old at least. Might be actually 3 years old at this point. They started shooting this like a while ago. When they started shooting this was still a COVID production, which is how they got actual big movie stars in this. Like Cate Blanchett is in this, Jamie Lee Curtis is in this. Like this feels like a movie that shouldn't have happened, and that the people involved, some of them may have forgotten that they made. Like, it's not that surprising that Kevin Hart is in this. Kevin Hart is one of those actors who doesn't need to make movies like this, but does because he understands that all that money could go away at some point, which, you know, respect. Cate Blanchett and Jamie Lee Curtis definitely do not need to be in this movie, and yet somehow are. And in the interviews and such, Cate Blanchett has been very upfront. This was basically, I'm going out of my mind, not working during COVID. Here's a movie where they're gonna let me do like Wild West gunslinger shit. I never get to do that in movies, which she basically doesn't. And she's actually really good at it. Like, if there's a reason to see this movie, it's because no one otherwise has been casting Cate Blanchett as a Party City Frightwig chick in leather running around shooting people with space cowboy guns, and she's actually really good at this shit. Very rarely gets to do bonkers, stupid B-movie action stuff, and whenever she does, it actually kind of feels like she missed her calling making good movies. I feel like people are going to be disappointed with this review because this has already come and gone. Nobody cares that they made this movie. This movie now is almost as irrelevant as a new Borderlands game is. The pop culture moment of Borderlands has passed, and the Borderlands movie has already passed. A quintessential nobody cares moment for this IP. This is one of the most egregious examples of a studio having just really taken what was at one point a property that really kind of, like, I get the sense meant a lot to a lot of people. I was never huge on Borderlands myself, but I know people are very big, or were very big, Borderlands fans when Borderlands was a big deal almost a decade ago. And if this had come out and been this bad then, I feel like people would have been very upset. Whereas now it's more like, oh yeah, the Borderlands movie sucks. I guess people really would have cared about that at some point. So hey, maybe there's a positive inside a negative there. We were spared a gamer freakout about a movie. In this case, it almost would have deserved one. I said almost. In any case, this is a sort of compressed, mushed down, balled up version of the general Borderlands scenario, which is a semi-satirical sci-fi piecemeal mishmash. There's a planet called Pandora, which was not that overused of a reference at this point when they first did this back. God, Borderlands is more than a decade old. How fucked up is that? It's been overrun by corporations so that they can do putting up signs and logos and call it satire. Everything looks like Mad Max, but slightly more colorful, and all of the characters talk like what the internet thinks Marvel movies sound like. And everyone is hunting around for alien artifacts that may or may not open a vault that may or may not be filled with the secrets of the universe, which is of course a giant colossal storm of cliches. But remember, they keep cracking jokes about the fact that it's cliche, so it's not technically formula. Kevin Hart is a soldier turned good who's trying to protect Tiny Tina, who may or may not be the key to opening the vault. Cate Blanchett is Lilith, who's a bounty hunter sent to stop them, but she has second thoughts because she has backstory about being an orphan herself. You can pretty much guess how this goes. Claptrap is there doing Claptrap stuff. There's a whole lot more better than you would expect to be in this actors, dressed up to varying degrees of cosplay from the game, standing around in the background going, hey look, we got the tattoo right, remember that? Again, this was probably never going to be good, but what basically happened was that this went off the rails well into production several years ago. They lost a bunch of writers. The original writer requested that his name be taken off of it, and when Eli Roth went off to make his Thanksgiving movie, they assigned another director to try and hammer this into something like a releasable form. So at some point this was much longer and probably still bad. The version that we've now got has basically been cut down to just dialogue, plot, cameos from the games, and get it into theaters at something close to 90 minutes so we can probably make some of our money back. back, they have not made their money back. And when I said that this review is probably going to disappoint people, it's not because I think that people were waiting for me to say something positive about this. I think that people are asking, oh man, come on, trash this, say how bad it is, give us some memorable stuff. But there's nothing memorably bad about this. It's bad in the most boring way possible. Despite all of the vague stabs at corporate satire, it's a corporate product movie. When I said that it feels like what the internet thinks the Marvel movies are, I wasn't joking about that. These are jokes that aren't really jokes, satire that isn't really satire, and characters that are like a vague pastiche of would be interesting if anyone was putting effort into making them interesting. I'm willing to entertain the idea that the original script for this might have had some actual heart in it. There's places there where you can see, oh, that might be interesting, a version of this might be good. I've seen the interesting version of aspects of this in the various movies that it was ripped off from, turned into the game, and then fed back out into this movie. The main real problem with this is that it's not bad enough to be fun. And by that I mean, if this wasn't so expensive, I could have had a good time with this. Because I've had a good time with movies that are more badly written and shabbily directed and non-committally acted than this, but they're usually cheaper and grimier and grungier and tackier, and therefore you can have fun because you're enjoying cheap, grimy, tacky product. Like, there's not functionally a lot of difference between this and movies like the Nemesis movies from Albert Pyun, God rest his soul, or like Lunar Cop, or Metal Storm, The Destruction of Jared Sin, or a bunch of other garbage post-apocalypse movies, space movies like that have this same kind of aesthetic that this is trying to affect just on their own by being cheap, junky exploitation movies. But those are fun because they're authentically junky. This is several $100 million worth of Hollywood product trying to fake that affect, and good actors trying to camp it up, and it just doesn't work. You know, one of the reasons that the Resident Evil movies, the Paul W.S. Anderson, Mila Jovovich Resident Evil movies, still kind of hold up is those actually were real B movies. They didn't spend that much on those. They spent millions on them to do CGI and have zombie effects, but they were still B movies with not full movie stars in them. They were cheap, the budgets were stretched, and they did what they had with them, and those are like the real versions of that. And they're schlock movies in the same way that, if we're being honest, the Resident Evil games, up until the last couple when they actually started trying to be these serious psychological horror experiences, the Resident Evil games were schlocky horror games. They made them into a different kind of schlocky horror movie. You know, the version of this that might have been made in the 90s, if there were Borderlands games in the 90s, that might have cost like $50 million, were directed by Paul Anderson, starring Mila Jovovich as Lilith instead of Cate Blanchett, probably would have been a lot of fun and people would have nostalgic memories of it. But instead we've got this, and it's a fake version of a tacky bad movie. And that's just not as fun. That's boring. It's dull watching something like this. And I don't have anything to say about it because there's nothing to pick apart. Like, the effects look good mostly. It would be more fun if they were bad. A goofy rubber mask on a monster is fun. A couple $100 million worth of CGI on a monster that still looks like crap just looks like crap. It's fun that Cate Blanchett is doing the gunslinging stuff because she looks ridiculous, but she seems to be having fun. No one else does. Not even the direction, whoever directed each part of it, doesn't seem all that inspired. Eli Roth, whatever else you can say about him, and people can say plenty about Eli Roth, at least used to be good at this sort of mishmash of tones and genres. Here, everything just seems to be on autopilot. This is just dull. I'm stuttering and struggling here because there's just nothing to say about it. It doesn't look interesting. It doesn't feel interesting. It's so bad, there isn't even anything to make fun of. Which is bizarre considering that the aesthetic the movie is going for is pretty colorful garbage. Like, that's the aesthetic of Borderlands, is it looks like Mad Max with trash strewn everywhere, but the trash is orange and teal and it's all cranked up and oversaturated. And the movie can't even get that edge of its aesthetic right. It's boring, it's dull, and I can't even muster the energy to truly hate it. 3 out of 10, and I'm giving that strictly, the 3 for that is strictly because Cate Blanchett looks fucking great in the leather and the gun belt and the too much makeup, and I'm only a human man, guys. Otherwise, yeah, this is straight garbage, and I was bored to tears.